On Easter Sunday, 1987, a field biologist named Noel Snyder climbed a cliff face in the rugged mountains north of Los Angeles and captured a California condor called AC-9. It was the last wild California condor on Earth. With that single bird secured in a padded transport crate, the species that had soared over North America for more than 40,000 years existed entirely inside zoo enclosures. 22 birds. That was the total global population of the largest flying bird on the continent, a creature with a wingspan stretching 9.5 feet from tip to tip. The California condor once ranged across the entire North American landmass. Fossil records show condors feeding on Pleistocene megafauna, the mastodons, giant ground sloths, and saber-toothed cats from the Atlantic coast to the Pacific. Condor bones have been found in excavation sites from New York to Florida to the deserts of Arizona. As the megafauna went extinct roughly 10,000 years ago, the condor's range contracted to the mountains and coastlines of California, Arizona, and Baja, Mexico. European settlers accelerated the decline through shooting, egg collecting, and habitat destruction. But the industrial era delivered the final killing blow. Lead ammunition was the primary driver of the collapse. California condors are obligate scavengers, meaning they eat only dead animals. When hunters shot deer, elk, coyotes, or ground squirrels and left the carcasses or gut piles in the field, condors fed on the remains and swallowed lead bullet fragments embedded in the flesh. Lead poisoning caused progressive neurological damage, organ failure, muscle paralysis, and a slow, painful death. A single lead fragment the size of a grain of rice contained enough toxin to kill a bird weighing 25 pounds. DDT compounded the crisis by thinning condor eggshells, the same mechanism that devastated bald eagles. Power lines electrocuted birds that roosted on high-voltage transmission towers. Habitat loss from urban development pushed the remaining population into smaller and smaller mountain territories. By the early 1980s, fewer than 25 condors remained in the wild, and the population was declining so rapidly that biologists calculated the species would be completely extinct within 5 years without intervention. The decision to capture AC-9 and bring the entire species into captivity was the most controversial conservation action in American history. The National Audubon Society publicly opposed it. The Sierra Club opposed it. David Brower, one of the most powerful voices in 20th century environmentalism, argued that a condor locked in a cage was no longer a condor. He said the species deserved to die free in the mountains, rather than exist as a zoo specimen behind chain-link fencing. The debate split the conservation community down the middle. The scientists at the San Diego Zoo and the Los Angeles Zoo pushed forward despite the opposition. They had no other option. Biologists developed techniques that had never been attempted at this scale for any bird species. They built puppet rearing systems, life-sized condor-shaped hand puppets used to feed chicks so they would not psychologically imprint on human caregivers. They perfected a method called double clutching, removing the first egg laid by each female to stimulate her to produce a second, effectively doubling reproductive output every breeding season without any additional breeding pairs. The first captive-bred California condors were released into the wild in 1992, into the mountains north of Los Angeles, where the species had last survived. The early results were discouraging. Power lines killed several released birds within the first year. Others approached hikers, campsites, and road traffic with no fear, a dangerous consequence of being raised around humans in captivity. Biologists went back to their protocols and redesigned the entire rearing system, adding aversion training that used mild electric shocks to teach young birds to avoid power lines, people, and structures before they were released. In 1996, a second release site was established at Vermilion Cliffs in northern Arizona, near the Grand Canyon. This was the first time California condors had flown in Arizona in nearly a century. The canyon provided ideal conditions for condors, with powerful thermal updrafts along the rim walls that allowed the massive birds to soar for hours without flapping their wings. Hikers and river rafters in the canyon began reporting sightings of enormous black birds soaring on thermals above the Colorado River, their wings casting shadows on the canyon walls that were the size of small aircraft. The Grand Canyon population grew slowly but steadily over 3 decades of careful management. Wild condor pairs began successfully courting, mating, nesting, and raising chicks without any human intervention, a milestone that many biologists had privately believed might never happen. Each unassisted breeding success represented genuine progress toward a self-sustaining population rather than permanent dependence on human management. By 2025, the global California condor population surpassed 530 birds. More than 340 are flying free across 4 states and Mexico. Condors nest in ancient redwood trees along the Big Sur coastline, soar above the spires of Pinnacles National Park, and ride thermals over the deepest stretches of the Grand Canyon. The species has reclaimed territory it had not occupied in over 100 years. Lead ammunition remains the single biggest ongoing threat to condor survival. California banned lead ammunition for all hunting in 2019. Arizona has implemented voluntary lead ammunition reduction programs in hunting zones near condor habitat. But condors range over thousands of square miles, crossing state lines freely, and lead exposure continues to poison and kill birds every year. Field biologists trap and blood test every single wild condor twice per year, rushing lead-poisoned birds to veterinary facilities for chelation therapy before releasing them back into the sky. The California Condor program costs more than $35 million per year and remains the most expensive single-species recovery effort in the history of American conservation. Critics argue the money could protect far more species if spent differently. Supporters counter that allowing the largest flying bird in North America, a species that survived ice ages, the extinction of the megafauna, and 40,000 years of environmental change, to go extinct on our watch would represent a moral and scientific failure without precedent. The bird that was reduced to 22 individuals in zoo cages on Easter Sunday, 1,987, is now soaring over the Grand Canyon, in numbers that grow every year. The scientists who captured AC-9 made the most controversial bet in conservation history. 37 years later, the sky over the deepest canyon in North America is proving them right.